Pardon? Oh, well, thank you. Finally, the respect that deserves.
I wouldn't go anywhere that far.
Gina's on the way.
So, who's here? Who's missing at the moment?
While we're here, you want to talk about the theories before we start?
About the what?
No, all
Well, it's Christmas time.
right. You got some presents there.
You mean elves and fairy shows we're talking about? No, we're just waiting. It's 1 o'clock start. Yeah. All right? Okay. Today we announce plans to end greyhound racing in New Zealand. This is not a decision that is taken lightly, but is ultimately driven by protecting the welfare of racing dogs. Despite significant progress made by the greyhound racing industry in recent years, the percentage of dogs being injured remains persistently high, and the time has come to make a call in the best interests of the animals. The greyhound industry has been on notice over animal welfare concerns for several years. You recall the reviews that were done in 2013, 2017 and 2021. And over the past decade, they all recommended significant changes. Now, we acknowledge the work done by Greyhound Racing New Zealand to improve safety. While fewer dogs are dying, injury rates, while down slightly, have plateaued and remain unacceptably high. It is intended that greyhound racing will be wound down over a 20-month period to enable the rehoming of racing dogs and to provide a transition period for people involved in the industry. Beginning the process today, we are introducing the racing industry unlawful destruction of specified greyhounds amendment bill, which will be passed under urgency to prevent the unnecessary killing of racing dogs. And we've had the commitment of 122 votes for that to happen. Further legislation to enable the end of greyhound racing is required. A bill to make the necessary changes to the Racing Industry Act 2020 will be introduced to Parliament in 2025. There will be a full select committee process so everyone will have a chance to have their say. A key task will be the rehoming of the estimated 2,900 racing greyhounds in New Zealand, and an advisory committee has been appointed to help manage the transition process. In the end, the time has come to do the right thing. Any questions?
How concerned were you about the unnecessary killing of dogs, and what impact has that had on the urgency with which you're passing the legislation this afternoon?
Well, look, we took our time about it. We took a whole year to evaluate what information we got when we came back to government, and we were cautious to make sure that we had all the facts. But the incidence of injuries is just unacceptable. It's about 16% above any acceptable benchmark, and it mirrors internationally some of the records there as well. And so in the end we had to make a decision, and we're making one.
So did the 1,054 people employed within the greyhound racing industry, what impact do you think this is going to have on particularly the TAB and their early week and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
Not a great deal of impact. It's only 8% of the industry, of the overall racing industry. And if you look at the figures, it represents sort of 3 persons per dog. So it means there must be a lot of casuals involved in as well. So the figure is related to that number, many of whom will be casual, and only 6 towns are involved.
Given the number of incidents of injuries that are still happening today, the fact that so few countries are actually still operating tracks and have these rules in place, and the fact that you have been so concerned as to rush through urgent legislation around protecting dogs, why give 20 months for this to be enforced?
So that people can properly wind down both their engagement, their industry, to harshly move in and shut it down on day one, when we have to make sure that we rehome these dogs, and that'll be a major initiative, including not just in this country but abroad perhaps. So we're looking at every other option, and 20 months gives us a time to do the job properly in a responsible way.
Do you consider a shorter time frame and get given advice that would not be long enough, or is this a time frame Cabinet has decided?
No, it's a time frame that I took to Cabinet and they accepted it.
Was there advice that suggested that it could have been done in a shorter period of time?
No.
Why wasn't it possible for the greyhound industry to meet the sort of welfare needs, to improve its circumstances and ensure its survival?
I can't answer that. But, there was the 2013 report, the Hansen report. They all pointed to far too high a level of injury. And we took a long time to see whether we could change those outcomes, and it didn't happen. So in the end, sadly, we've had to make what I say is the right decision.
Is it that greyhound racing just simply can't be done in a way that is permissible in this day and age?
Well, I give you 1,000 answers to that. I mean, if it was a straight course, it might mitigate against damage and injuries, but that's not the way things are set up. We've got to work in the framework that we've got.
What sort of pushback did you get from the industry about this announcement?
They're finding out right now, like you.
So they're learning about this for the first time via this press conference. They were given no prior warning?
No, they were given prior requests to improve the outcomes, going back to the 2013 review, the 2017 review, and the 2021 review.
Why did you decide to do it this way instead of giving them at least maybe an hour or so heads up?
Because I want to make sure that they will know that within 2 hours of the legislation coming before Parliament, that these dogs are going to be rehomed properly.
And as racing minister, how does this personally sit with you to be essentially ending an entire section of racing?
Well, it's just not a matter of how I feel about it. It's whether we're doing the right thing. It's easy to do. Often in the court of law, it's easy to do justice. In many circumstances, it's easy to do what the law might say, but doing the right thing is something special. That's why I think it's a very significant day.
Will the government consider financial assistance to help greyhound racing?
We have a review committee, and they're going to be giving us all those views from their consultation with the wider industry.
What's the time frame for that review committee to come back to you with their recommendations?
Well, they'll tell us when they get through their work, but that committee is being launched today.
And can you talk about who's on that committee?
Yes, I can. Just give me a second here. Heather Simpson will be the chair. Murray Johnson will also be on it, and a veterinarian, Lindsay Burton.
Minister, you talked, I think it was in a select committee, talked about how, you know, greyhounds and dogs and horses, if you woke up at 5 a.m. or whatever time frame it was, you'd find them racing around and doing it because that's what they were meant to do.
Yeah.
To Jason's questions, I suppose, given that that's your view, how have you reflected on this decision over the past year?
Well, then they can race around the park and they can race around the beach, but they won't be racing on a track and getting themselves injured to the degree they're getting themselves injured now.
Are there enough homes for these greyhounds to go to in New Zealand?
We believe that we can find them working with the SPCA and other groups, and including maybe an international consignment, because they're very popular in some countries. But we think overall we can get on top of this, and the review committee will be working on that, and that's why we need the time frame.
Presumably you wouldn't want a situation
Well, see, don't forget the season ends at the end in 2026. That's the last season.
Presumably you wouldn't want a situation, presumably,
Sorry,
just to
I-
follow on from that.
One more time?
Presumably you wouldn't want a situation though where you sent greyhounds overseas who then ended up racing on tracks overseas,
Oh
right?
no, they'll be rehomed, not re-racetracked.
Mr. Peters, what is the...
That's why I use that phrase.
Very good.
Words matter. Yes.
What will be the penalty for anyone found to have unnecessarily killed a dog after the legislation passes today?
It'll be in the legislation today. See, it'll be there at 3 o'clock, you'll hear it.
There might be some in other industries, such as horse racing, watching this press conference, that are a little bit worried that you might do the same thing when it comes to horse racing. Could you let us know if you've got any plans for similar moves in that industry?
No, apart from, we have always, and as a minister I've always, since 2005, been interested in animal safety, and that's why we have, in the horse racing industry, both for the trots and the gallops, we have a fund, and we had in this industry as well, to improve amenities to make racing safer.
To the layman,
And we've stuck with it, even coming back, we revived that fund again.
to the layman, would you mind describing just a bit of the difference between horse racing and greyhound racing in terms of the safety aspect of it? Why is it okay for horses but not greyhounds?
Well, they're different animals.
No, I obviously
Had you
get
noticed that? They're totally different animals,
In
right?
terms of the way that the safety regulations work.
I don't get the point of your question. Have a good hard look. They're totally different animals. One's got a jockey on them, or's got a driver behind them. The other one's unloosed by themselves.
Comparable welfare concerns with the horse racing industry.
We've always got ongoing concerns, and we're watching that all the time. That's why we have amongst other things, we have an integrity committee looking after that, and a safety committee.
But it's not comparable in the sense that you're not reviewing whether the horse racing industry needs to be similarly closed.
No, we have not come to any such consideration, because we think the safety measures we've got in place now are a serious improvement in what wasn't there in the past.
Are they adequate?
Well, that's what we strive to annually get a report on, get an update on. If anything goes wrong, we get reports that week from the industry, and we have people carefully monitoring it. Remember this, between both dogs and horses, there's an amazing connection with humanity. Should never overlook that.
Is there sufficient
And this is
resourcing?
not my first rodeo, sorry.
Is there sufficient resourcing right now to ensure that there aren't, those unnecessary, kills or, dogs being euthanised within RSPCA or within Animal Welfare Inspectorate? Right now, can they go out there and ensure that this isn't going to happen in the interim?
Well, I can give you the political answer. I can give you the honest answer, is that those in care for animal safety will always say they haven't got enough resources. Our job is to try and find them more.
So you're looking for more resources?
Well, it's in very trying times, yes, we are.
New Zealand was one of only 5 countries left greyhound racing. Why do you think it is that we held on to that sport for so long?
I can't really answer that question other than to say, well, I was very concerned, particularly when I saw the Hansen report, given the regard I had to the level of work that went into it, to see that there wasn't the adequate response was very disappointing.
Seeing any legal challenges by any of the greyhound racing industries back on the government? Is that something that you've been seeking advice from Crown Law over?
The reason why we've gone about it in the way we have, in the form we have, and over the time frame we have, is to ensure that the likelihood of a legal challenge is extraordinarily remote.
You mentioned the SPCA. Which other animal welfare organisations are you going to be working with?
Well, you remember, we were the ones that started alongside people from outside of here, adoption of dogs in prisons. And some of them, they were amazing, the adoptions, the way they worked. They helped prisoners reform, change their lives. They had some to look after for a while, and they changed them. So we're still working on that, and the former Labour Party president was the one that worked with us on it.
Would you consider adopting a greyhound?
Me?
yourself?
It's funny enough, yeah, I have thought about that, but you know, what you've got to make sure you do is not adopt it because it's a good idea, it's because you've got the time to spend with the animal. And as you know, it's not been a very easy year. I've been overseas 19 times at 42 countries, although I've only missed 8 days of Parliament, which is a bit of a record here and here.
What's your message?
My point is, when I look after the dog, when I take him for a run.
What if we have a little bit more extra time after the next election? Would you maybe...
Well, the chances of that are very remote because there's certain things set in the sand. If you've had a look at the underlying trend of the polls all year, we've been over 7% in the polls that really matter. Not the chaff you guys print, but the ones we count on. Now, remember, we started in 2023 at less than 1%, and what ended up in that campaign, despite you shutting us out. So stand back and watch what's coming.
What's your message?
I'm glad you raised this. This is a bit like a race itself.
Who's winning?
What's your message to people out there who might be thinking about adopting a dog in the future?
Well, I think if you make sure they've got the time and look at all aspects, and if you can, it'll be fantastic because they are superbly good pets
Can I ask?
and very clean.
I'd like to ask about the Racing Industry Amendment Bill and the further safeguards and reporting obligations that you're putting on the TAB. Do you feel comfortable with that level of safeguards?
I'm here to announce that I'm happy to make an announcement at 1 o'clock about the dog racing industry, and it's after 3 o'clock there'll be the first bill. Then after that it'll be the second bill, and you'll see all that unfold today.
Can I just circle back to the TAB?
In other words, get back to the right track.
Sure, but
Talk about dog tracks now.
The industry as a whole.
Sorry?
Just circling back to the TAB question, are you confident that they will be able to fill their schedule without dog racing?
I'm very confident. You'll see from the industry, they've been delighted by what we've done, getting set to ensure that there's going to be over $1 billion over the next 10 years to the racing industry. I inherited a very unfortunate circumstance, but we've worked very hard to turn that around. If you ask the racing industry, I'll tell you.
And do you expect them to stop showing international dog racing on TAB?
Look, I can't, if this is racing offshore, we have no control over their industry. And I don't know why on earth that they're fixing up the dog industry in this country. It's got me answering questions as to whether or not they're going to be banned from showing a dog race internationally.
Do you expect
Morally, if
You see what I mean? I mean, you know, this is what I call clutching at straws.
Is there any...
well, I mean, morally, if New Zealand doesn't support dog racing and we don't have any...
I don't think we're into that sort of media censorship, if you don't mind. We're a freedom party.
Do you expect that all...
People are going to right turn on TV and watch what they can watch without the virtue signals telling what's good for them. That new form of sort of leftist Nazism is not part of our plan.
Is there any thought to the future of, or what's going to happen with the racing infrastructure across the country at all?
What do you mean the racing infrastructure?
With the infrastructure associated with the industry. Is anything...
with the dog industry?
Yeah.
Well, most of these tracks are dual used by the trotting industry and other public communities, so there's no great loss here.
Do you expect that the bill before the House this afternoon will be supported by all political parties in all three stages?
Yes, they told me so.
Okay, so you...
Yeah. This shows you what tact and diplomacy will do in a very fractious time in politics. We've got 122 votes.
Mr. Peters, will taxpayers have to pick up some of the costs of winding up the industry, like, for example, support for businesses involved or anything like that?
You'll have to wait for the report of the committee and our further consultation with the industry.
And you mentioned this was a significant day. Can you just elaborate on how significant this announcement is for you?
Well, I think it's a response that the public will be pleased about. It's always wrong to be premature in this sort of decision making. We've taken the time and been cautious about it. We've had all sorts of people giving us advice, but in the end, we've got the plan that is fair to the industry, fair to the owners, and above all, right for the dogs. Thank you.
Can I just ask one last question? The risk around dogs being euthanised and the need for this urgent legislation, how great was that risk? Did you get advice around how big an issue that would be?
We were seriously alerted, not that we had to be, we were seriously alerted that there could be some huge, serious abuse of dogs unless we got on top of it right here, right now, and put the law in place that dates from the very moment it comes to Parliament this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.